Okay, so this is my personal journey through Erikson stages of development, and I am interviewing my mom. Wave, mom. Her name is Amy. Okay, so I'm going to be explaining some things to you before I ask each question. And then we're just going to kind of go through. Some of them are more psychological questions, some of them are just like, what's your favorite memory type thing. So some of them are easier than others. So for this first question, I'm going to explain to you there are three different types of children based on researchers Chess and Thomas. The first one is an easy child, is what they called it. This child is generally in a positive mood. They quickly establish routines in infancy, so they like have their same thing that they go through. They don't really change a whole lot, and then they adapt easily to new experiences. And this is from ages like birth until say 5-ish. Then there's the difficult child who usually reacts negatively and cries a lot, engages in irregular daily routines. There's never really a balance or anything like that. And then they're very slow to accept change. And then the third one is the slow to warm up child. So these children are usually, they don't have a very high activity level. They're just kind of lethargic all the time. They're somewhat negative. They're mostly like in the middle, but they lean more towards negativity, and they display a low intensity of moods, so they don't really get riled up easily. They're just kind of numb most of the time as a child. So keeping these in mind, how would you say I was as a child?
I would say the first one describes you the best.
So an easy child.
Yes.
So keeping that in mind, how would you say I went about those daily routines and like developed through them?
You were always a very curious child. You were always very eager to learn. Want to figure out things. For example, climbing upstairs when you were a toddler, you insisted on doing it, even though, mom thought it was dangerous, but you wanted to accomplish things even at an early age.
Okay. And I'm also taking notes as you're talking. Okay, so how would you say my diet and exercise levels were as a child?
Excellent. I would say I stayed very well, and you never had any complaints with any kind of food. As a baby, you absolutely loved to eat potatoes. You loved everything I put in front of your face, and you were always adventurous in trying new things. I remember your dad brought you to try sushi at a young age, and you loved it. As far as exercise goes, your activity level was high. You always wanted to be active and doing something, engaging in some kind of physical activity.
Okay, and then how would you say my relationship with other people were and how I talked to them?
At a young age, it was mama only. You were very, very shy. You were very clingy with just me, but you did warm up slowly to others. I know your grandma tried to get you to warm up to her, and you typically had to be around them for quite a while before you could trust yourself with them. Did relate well to other children. I remember one time, every time we would take you to Chick-fil-A as a toddler, even at 4 years old, you would be in the Chick-fil-A playground thing, the indoor playground thing, and you were leading all the other kids. In whatever game you wanted to play, they would follow you and do what you wanted to do. Even older kids, twice your age, would be doing what you wanted them to do.
Okay, and how would you say like my communication level was at a young age?
Excellent. Even at when all the other toddlers and babies were in the
babbling
phase, you were speaking at 18 months, you were speaking fluent sentences. Any adult could understand you. It wasn't one of those things where it was just your parents could understand you. No, it was everyone could understand you. You spoke very perfectly at a young age.
So then my final kind of sub question for this first one is, would you say that I developed quicker than most other children?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So this next question is about you. So I'm going to explain, there was a psychologist called, his last name was Baumrind, if that's how I'm saying it correctly. So he defined that there were 4 types of parenting styles. So the first one is called authoritarian, where they're very restrictive, punitive style in which parents exhort the child to follow their directions and respect their work and effort. They're not very lenient with their kids. They're often called like very strict. And then they often don't really comfort the child very well. And then there is authoritative parenting, where these parents encourage children to be independent, but they still place limits and controls on their actions. So they're more involved in their child's life, but they still have those rules that prevent them from doing certain things at certain ages. The third one is neglectful parenting, where the parent is just uninvolved in the child's life. They don't really care. They don't show any love or support. And then they also have no rules. So the child just does whatever, but they don't have any parental guidance. And then the last one is called indulgent parenting, where the parents are highly involved in their children's lives. They like to do everything with them, teach them a lot, but they have very few demands or controls on them. So there's like no rules. They give them whatever they want, no matter what age they are. So with those 4 in mind, what would you say your parenting style or approach was like?
I believe it was a combination of the second and third one, the punitive and authoritative.
Okay.
Yeah, I was raised under a very strict authoritative, and I didn't want to raise my children that way. So I wanted to be loving and nurturing. For instance, my parents, if they, you need to do this, and we asked why, they'd say, because I said so. I didn't want to be like that. So I would give you the explanation as to why I would want you to do something. A good example of that is if my dad said, don't cross the road, and we said, why? He'd say, because I said so. But if I said, Kylie, don't cross the road because a car might hit you, that's kind of more what I would do. But I always wanted to give explanations. I guess that's where the teaching part would come in. But yes, I absolutely did put limits, but it was more not from control, but more as protection.
Okay. And how would you say I reacted to those rules and explanations?
Very well. Very well. You were a very obedient child. Like I said, you were very curious and you wanted to and explore and do new things. But again, if I would explain things to you, you had an understanding of it, and you from that made good decisions.
Okay. So now moving on to the next question. You already know what these words mean, but I'm going to define them in the way that psychology has defined them. So talking about self-esteem and self-concepts. So self-esteem are global evaluations of self, just kind of like how you appear in the world, and then how you see yourself based on how others react to you. And then self-concept is domain-specific evaluations of the self, which means the way that you see yourself without other people involved or their opinions. Self-esteem does not always reflect reality. Children with high self-esteem do not necessarily perform better in school, but they have greater initiative, and this could be positive or negative. And then to help increase a child's self-esteem, you have to identify the causes of the low self-esteem, provide emotional and social support, help them achieve, and help them cope. Now, self-regulation are deliberate efforts to manage one's behavior, emotions, and thoughts. This leads to increased social competence and achievement and increased capacity for self-regulation. And then I honestly don't know how to say this word. Self-efficacy is the belief that one can master a situation and produce favorable outcomes. So with that in mind, when I started school, like in both kindergarten and then 6th grade and then freshman year, how was my self-esteem and self-concept for each of those beginning new schools?
I think in elementary, it your self-esteem was high. I think as well as 6th grade too. 6th grade is always a tough year for any child, but I believe it appeared that yours was a good self-esteem because of your accomplishments. You had always accomplished. You were every teacher's. You were the perfect student. You always made straight A's. You always turned in things early. If it was a project, you always had it finished early. So I believe, from what it appeared from the outside, you had good esteem. Now, high school was a little bit different. It seemed like your self-esteem was more geared toward what other people thought of you, but you always maintained those high accomplishment goals when it came to your education.
Okay. And how would you say that I viewed myself? If you can, like, kind of speak on that from an outside perspective.
I think you always questioned and doubted yourself, whether it was your skills, your relational aspect towards other people. You always questioned it. So I think you did have a lower self-esteem about that, and it didn't matter. You all encouraged you that you were a wonderful person. I think your personality is a lower self-image, self-esteem.
Okay. So now these are getting into the kind of easier questions before we get back into more difficult questions. So what was the funniest memory you have of me in early childhood?
Funny?
Mm-hmm.
You were always funny. You always made people laugh. I think your confidence in your humor was off the charts. You knew you were funny, and so it was very easy to make us all laugh. You just, I can't pinpoint one in particular instance of you being funny because you were hysterical all the time. There wasn't a day that you didn't make us laugh constantly.
Okay. Now, on the flip side of that, what is the saddest memory you have in early childhood?
That's hard to say. I can't think of any instance. Are you referring to you being sad or you making us sad?
Yeah,
or...
so it could be like, if I went through a situation where I was really sad and it like hurt you to see me sad, or if there was, like, for example, what comes to mind is when I had rotavirus, that probably was very stressful for you. So if that was the saddest memory or something like that.
Yes, that's a good one, because that does that did make me feel completely helpless. You did have rotavirus at about 18 months, and you had to be hospitalized because, everything was coming up that you were consuming. And so you had to be hospitalized, and to see you in their metal cage looking crib, sleeping hooked up to an IV to get nutrition in you, that you were completely helpless. So that was definitely hard.
Okay. If you could do anything over, what would it be and why? Like, or do it differently?
What parent doesn't tells that? um, I I always encouraged you, whether it be your intelligence, your physical abilities, your physical traits. I always told you how amazing you were. But I think once you got to high school, you tended to not hear that encouragement anymore, because with high school, people tend to compare themselves, especially girls, to any other girls. And I think you stopped listening to my encouragement. So if I could do anything over again, it would be to figure out, had I known your exact personality type, maybe I could have helped you or encouraged you more in relation to your personality type, that would have helped you to become a more confident person at that time.
Okay. Now on the flip side of that, what do you feel you did the best in at raising me?
I made sure that you were strong and healthy. I gave you proper nutrition, even above proper nutrition, organically, and gave you a variety of foods to make you strong and healthy. And I do love, and it's simply because my parents did not give me this, but I always gave you all the information and let you make the choices for yourself, that that way you would present me for anything that you do. I believe in giving you all the information and then you letting you yourself choose. Like even as far as classes to take in high school or things like that, where to work, I would give you information and then you would make your own decisions. And that way they were your decisions.
Okay. So this is going to be the last question before we move to kind of a different form of questions. So if I were becoming a parent, what would be the one piece of advice you would give to me?
I've always told people to maintain communication with their children, no matter what, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how easy it is, at whatever age. Just keep a constant line of communication open with them. Ask questions that they have to answer with more than just yes or no. Ask those conversational questions.
Okay. So this is going to be moving into, how I mentioned at the beginning how I said through Erikson's stages of development? So Erik Erikson was a psychologist who had a theory of explaining different stages of development in more stages in more detail than other psychologists had at that point. So I have gone through about I'm in my 6th stage of development according to Erikson. So I'm going to explain each one by one, and then after each one I'm going to kind of ask you how you thought I dealt with that stage, if I have any past or current issues with it, and if you think that I resolved it. Because each stage has a conflict that you have to resolve in order to move on, according to his theory. So the first one is the trust versus mistrust stage, which is from birth to 2 years old, where you develop kind of a sense of self, self-recognition, self-awareness, and kind of talking on that imprinting and attachment to your parents. If you attach well, and then you can trust others and learn to trust your environment and be curious. But if you don't have a parent who you're securely attached to, then you're very fearful, scared, and it can show up later in your life. So according to trust versus mistrust, would you say that I still have any issues from that stage?
From 0 to 2, no, absolutely not.
But now looking, so then I did not. No issues with trust?
Right.
But would you say that I do now?
Yes.
Okay. How do you think I can resolve my issues with trust now?
I think you're working through them with counseling. Can I?
Yeah. Okay. So now moving on to the next stage is called autonomy versus shame and doubt, which is ages 2 to 4. Where this is all about independence, where it's like, I can do it, I do that, I want to do this, where you just try things over and over again until you get it or until you learn. Or on the opposite side, if you're told, no, don't do that, you'll hurt yourself, don't go up there, you can't do that, then that's where the child will develop a sense of shame and doubt. And not really confidence in their decisions. But if the parent encourages them, hey, try this again, then they'll feel a sense of autonomy and confidence within themselves. So at that age, would you say that I had more autonomy or more shame and doubt?
Autonomy.
Okay. Now, what about now? Would you say that I have more autonomy or shame and doubt now?
I think, but there are some levels out with certain parts of your life.
What parts of my life would you say?
Relational.
Okay. What would you say that I can do to resolve that stage now?
Again, it's working on trust issues, and the counseling, speaking to someone who's, knows how to work through those with you.
Okay. So now going on to the third stage is called initiative versus guilt. Oh, wait. Did I miss a stage? Oh, I don't think I have that one written down. So initiative versus guilt, that's really awkward. I might have to pull up my notes real fast. Hold on. I'm so sorry. So initiative versus guilt is ages 3 to 5. They tend to use their perceptual, motor, cognitive, and language skills to make things happen. On their own initiative, children move out into a wider social world. And then this enthusiasm may result in rewards or guilt, which lowers self-esteem. So would you say that I had more initiative or guilt at ages 3 to 5?
Initiative. One.
How?
You were fearless at trying anything, and pretty much everything you did succeed. So you continue to strive to do even more.
Okay, so what about now? Do I have more initiative or guilt now?
I think a little of both. When it comes to your career, your motivation, that's complete initiative. Personal life, I would say, is more the opposite.
Okay. And how do you think I can overcome that now? Or resolve it?
Time and experience.
Okay. So the next stage is called industry versus inferiority. And this stage is from 5 to 12 years. It's like elementary school years where the child finds interest. It's the age of confrontation. They need a lot of affirmation. If the child is encouraged, then they'll become a hard worker. But if the child receives too much negativity, then they'll lose interest and feel inferior to their classmates. So at that age, would you say, which one would you say I fell more into?
What were they called?
Industry or inferiority?
Industry.
How?
You never failed anything. I don't think, I think it was the other classmates who felt inferior to you. You were a perfectionist. Everything you touched turned to gold. Everything you did, you succeeded at.
Okay. And how would you say I am now?
You still succeed at anything, motivation-wise, schooling, 4.0. Yeah.
Okay. So would you say there's anything I need to resolve, or would you say that I have handled that stage pretty well in my life?
I think you've handled.
Okay. So we just have 2 left. So this next one is identity versus role confusion. And this is age 13 to 19, where it's a lot of questions of who am I, where do I stand in society, oftentimes experience a sexual crisis, and people will be who they want to be. Oftentimes a lot of arguing with parents to try to become like who the child wants to be. So I just came out of this stage. So would you say that during that stage, would you say that I was very confused in my role, or I knew my identity?
I think you were confident until around 17, 18.
Okay. Why do you say that those ages? What happened then? And you can talk, it's okay, she knows.
I think let me find my words. I believe, and this is just my opinion, you were always very insecure with who you were, and you wanted to be and fit in. And so what was accepted out here is what you allowed yourself to become, so that you could feel more confident and be accepted and loved by others.
Okay. Would you say that now I still have issues with that, or have I fallen more into the category of knowing my identity?
I am not sure. um, I think you're still struggling, but I think that you think your identity.
Okay. And then what are some steps you think I can take to resolve this stage?
I think with a counselor who is able to work through your past situations and help you pinpoint where you start doubting yourself, and with that counselor's help, working through that and moving forward, to help your confidence,
Okay.
you're doing now.
So this is the last stage that I'm in. There's more stages, but I'm not old enough. So this one is called intimacy versus isolation. This is ages 20 through 40, where the main question is, can I make long-term relationships, or am I going to feel isolated? And then also just kind of a subcategory is chances of divorce are higher for those who grew up with divorced parents. So would you say that right now I want more intimacy, or I want more isolation?
I'd say intimacy.
Do you think I have problems with intimacy?
Yeah.
In what areas?
I think in your personal relationships, you want that close, intimate friendship, but then it consumes you to where you can't or aren't trying to make other relationships or friendships around you. So in a way, you want the intimacy, but it also isolates you. Or
Well, this doesn't have to do with me, but would you say that since you kind of, in a way, just came out of this stage as well, would you say that your intimacy with my dad led to isolation as well?
do we mean isolation as, what do you mean by isolation?
So this stage is all about romantic relationships, and about finding, quote, your person and kind of settling down with them, and then just kind of starting the rest of your life with them. Or if you don't want that form of intimacy, then you tend to, quote, be isolated, but not in the way of friendships, because friendships was in the previous stages. So this isolation is more of, I'm not going to be in a romantic relationship, I'm just going to focus on myself and have fun with friends.
So the question for me was what?
So you said that I become so consumed with one person at a time that it isolates myself from other friends. So I was asking, would you say that you experience the same with my dad?
No.
Okay. Would you say that since I just fell into this stage, that I am at a normal amount of trying to discover what intimacy is, or am I too consumed with it?
I think you're too consumed with it.
Okay, and how do you think that I can work towards resolution of this stage?
I would assume that figuring out which phases that you didn't, what did you say, complete or
overcome. Yeah.
I'd say figuring those out with the help of a counselor, alleviate any of that and help you move forward.
Okay, so now this, we're done with the stages questions, but kind of looking back at how you answered each question, to me it seems like most of my problems in the following stages came from a lack of trust, which is the first stage. So would you say that in order to do better kind of at the stages, I need to first work on the base of trust, or do I need to focus elsewhere first?
If you're talking about the trust from the 0 to 2 years, I would pinpoint your mistrust issues in the middle school years.
Well, another thing to keep in mind is just because I didn't have trust issues during those ages doesn't mean that I can't have problems with it now. Like, it can't circle back. So, would you say that, like, that's my main concern is trust, or are more of my issues like shame and doubt, guilt, inferiority?
It would have to be trust.
Okay. So then that is all the questions I have for you. So I'm going to finish the recording now, so wait, bye. Thank you for your time.